My hands are cold. I'm nervous and excited. 40 seconds to the start. 3.
So let's go, go, go! The race has begun! Ah, what a rush. The thing is, I've done the Entro e-Crit 9 times already. I haven't missed a single race, so I'm very glad for that. So after 9 times, I definitely know the merits of being able to hold on to people's wheels as much as possible, because as you can see on the top left already, we are saving 80, 90 watts, 100 watts. So that's what you get when you manage to hold on to people's wheels. And the thing is, I don't know if the word exponential is right here, but you get punished the moment you start to open up any kind of gap, like what you see in front of me right now. Yeah, basically you're gonna have to work very hard, very much harder, in order to close the gap. So coming into this race, I was aware that there are actually some riders who are not they didn't sign up for the league in January, so they're actually more transient, which is a good thing. So I'm glad Entro actually opened up the league, this e-Criterium, to just about anyone who's able to make it on that day. This is because the more bodies there are, the more people there are to potentially draft. But also, in a way, it almost just kind of fills up the playing field with more cyclists. All right, so just want to say something about what you see on screen right now, which is "Don't Look Back." So this, as I eventually figured out, was like a mini game within the race itself. So this is actually the leaderboard for the slope. So if you look at the bottom left, you see the course terrain. So yeah, so it's not a very steep slope, but it's a slope nonetheless. So that's why I guess there is a separate call out for it. So right now we are more or less at the very halfway mark in the race. At this point in time, I think it is. I think okay, yeah, I remember now. So I was kind of wondering whether S Tomo was a female cyclist. In which case there would be Sarah, Clara, Patricia. Like if you see on the left, two of them, R Proof, myself, and S Tomo as 5 females. So we haven't had that many females in a long time, in a few months. So in general, there are not many female cyclists who are doing e-racing. The female racers in Singapore are usually off doing physical races. So I know like in the earlier months they were doing Chiang Mai and other races. But yeah, so I was thinking, wow, are there 5 women? Am I gonna be off the podium? But I think in the end, S Tomo, which is who is number 20 now, I don't think they were female in the end. But yeah, so I was like slightly preoccupied with that question for a while. But sorry, as I was saying, so we are already past the halfway mark of the first lap, and I'm still holding on. I am so happy. I'm so happy that I'm holding on. And why I'm happy is because my general. Oh wait, look, I'm being pushed about. But yeah, so my general strategy involves me making sure that I keep to a sustainable power pace, meaning that I don't blow out in the first lap. It's very easy to blow out in the first few laps, especially when the race is kind of long. This one is like 20, maybe almost 20 km. The longer the race, the harder it is to hold on, the harder it is to actually know how to manage yourself so that you don't absolutely kill yourself trying to keep up with the pack in order to save watts. But yet, of course, you know how to really push yourself to that limit, to give all of your power without blowing out. So into the second lap, still super happy about being behind Butts. So right in front of me, we have Alvin and Isaac. Hip hip hooray for me. Very glad to be sticking to them. Now and then, I think now and then we do see, gaps in. Okay, there's definitely a gap right in front of me right now. How did I manage to close the gap? I have no idea. But yeah, as you can see, 244 watts, spiking up, spiking down. Right, on that note, so actually in the August criterium, I was wondering whether there was some problem with my trainer or with how it connected to Wahoo RGT, but basically my power, which it you can actually see it right now also, my power was spiking all over the place, and it didn't seem natural, or it didn't seem technically feasible for my cadence to be constant, but yet the power to be just all over the place. So you can compare more clearly when there's no one in front of me, so meaning there's no draft effect, and when it's a flat, straight road. Because one thing about Wahoo RGT is that real world physics comes into play, meaning when you're cornering, the software will actually kind of not allow you to just like blast through the curve. Yeah, but yeah, anyway. So right now, still with Isaac and Alvin. What I was saying earlier about gaps between packs. So the thing is, when you are following someone's butt and then there's a gap in front of them, that's when you have to make a decision. Do you stick your neck out in the wind and then try to bridge to the pack that is pulling away from your pack? Or do you accept that, you know what, I don't want to push the gas so hard right now. Let me stick to this pack, come what may. Meaning, no matter how far the breakaway pack goes. And what I've seen on my own experience so far is that you definitely have to make this decision within half a second, because the longer you take to decide, the harder it is for you to bridge the gap. So this applies in real life also. Right now, Isaac and Alvin have just swapped places. Yeah, I am just taking it somewhat chill. Actually, if I recall, I wasn't feeling like 100% amazing. I wasn't ill or anything. It was just a weird feeling. I probably even took a COVID test a few days, or like the day before this. But yeah, so I told myself, you know what, I'm not going to go too crazy also. So that was my mindset entering the August and also the July intro e-crit. So right now we are at lap 2. Oh, I'm surprised I'm in the wind, because in my recollection of this race, I told myself, okay, I will hold on as long as I can. And then at least for the second half, I know that I had a discount of being able to draft for the first half. So yeah, I'm surprised I let myself be in the wind for so long. Like since I'm already in a pack. But yeah, in any case, you can see Alvin and myself pushing each other. So that's not very efficient in terms of three of us working together. But in any case, it's not really three of us working together, because I admittedly have not been taking much wind, or rather, I have not been taking much wind for the team. I was taking some wind because I was simply not inside the pack. But even in Wahoo RGT, when you're drafting behind one person, look, I am saving 200 over watts just by drafting Isaac. And the thing is, I think they calculate also based on how fast you're going. So the faster you are, if you manage to draft someone, you save more watts. One more thing to note, and yep, we just lost Alvin for a while there, but if you look at his watts per kg, I think he was like trying really hard to catch up. One more thing to note is that the UX allows you to see how many meters away people are from you. So if you look at the rightmost number in all these rows of numbers and names, you can see that the distance between our pack and the pack in front of us is 15 to 20 to 45, 50 meters ahead of us, which sounds short if you're thinking in your mind about a stadium. It sounds like a short distance, but in cycling, it's a pretty big distance, because assuming both of you, meaning you and the pack in front of you, assuming both of you are traveling at the same speed, the distance between both of you will actually just remain the same. So in order for you to close the gap, you have to accelerate and be faster than the pack in front of you, which can sometimes be already stronger than you. That's why they're in front of you in the first place. So yeah, so this gap right now is 20 plus 30, 60, 70 meters and opening. So I think many seconds ago, I've definitely consigned myself to how we are not going to bridge over,
Thanks,
and I'm
Isaac.
very
Chill,
okay
bye.
with that. Partly
Thanks very
also
much.
because throughout all these e-criteriums,
Is this cheating?
so to be very
Yes.
frank, because there are
This
so
is
few
actually cheating.
women, sometimes I automatically podium anyway. So
Jonathan, wait.
it's a matter
Between me
of
and you,
am I going to be third or second? And then if Sarah is not joining, then the question is, am I going to be first? Because Sarah is super strong, and I always say this: as long as she is
indoor
also
trainer.
participating, I do not even harbor in my mind any
I
kind of
feel
notion
indoor
about,
trainer.
okay, let me try to draft Sarah, and then at the very end, I will pull out from the side and say thanks for the pull. No, no, no. So yeah, so that's why actually psychologically it's not so vicious, because in a way it's also not about the placement anymore. At the end of each race, you can actually
Here we go.
see your
Small hill.
watts per kg effort for the whole entire duration, and that is satisfying even if you don't see what other people achieve in terms of timing, because then you know how hard you worked, and sometimes you can even track improvements
Thank
between
you so much, Eric.
races, especially if the races are like
Appreciate the
somewhat
donut.
similar. Sorry, that was a lot about competition and such like. But yeah, Isaac has been superb at pacing.
Okay.
um we are entering the fourth lap. So we are not quite halfway
When do
there
you return,
yet.
Eric?
We will reach the halfway mark
John, I wish I could.
when we
I
are
can't.
finished with this fourth lap, but until then, we are not
If
done.
I would, I would. If I could, I would.
So when I was doing this race, I was also, I guess, out of a neutral kind of curiosity, I was also keeping my eye on this
Okay.
live ranking just to see whether, as the race got on, like as it progressed, would my timing improve at all? I mean, clearly the answer was going to be no, because it's very unlikely that you can beat your first lap timing in terms of surging up the hill. But yeah, so the thing
We
is,
need the
I
last
think when you are
two laps
suffering
of Brick Away.
and
West Coast Highway.
absolutely slaughtering yourself to give your
This is the
all, your mind goes to very funny places. So for this race, it honestly wasn't so devastating because I managed to draft Isaac for so long. I think I started drafting him maybe close to the start of the second lap, like more properly. Although, as we've seen, there were times when I wasn't precisely in the pack. There were times when I think there was a gap in front of me, but the watt
thanks.
savings is really tremendous. So now instead of Alvin, we have D Hercules. So we're forming a
Yes, I'm
kind of a
drinking tea.
pack. But as I said, because I've also told myself that I want to stop drafting at a certain point in time, this is also where I began to think of, hey, maybe if D Hercules is going to increase his
162.
own pace
I'm
such that
drafting
he
in a
pulls
peloton.
away from Isaac, I told myself
Otherwise,
that, okay, I will make
my
sure
output
I
would be a lot
follow.
higher.
But
I'm
instead of
also
that
like
happening
physically
straight
super
away,
well.
uh, they cycled side by side, and I don't know whether I
I
got
will
like a
not
double draft
bomb
from that
down
because it's like a
the
windshield of
route.
two bodies in front of me. Of course, if this were real life, because both Isaac and D Hercules are probably substantial and muscular, so in real life, I think if they were both in front of me like that, it would have truly been an air conditioned train. But yeah, I don't know how the physics of Wahoo RGT works, whether like each body is just one unit, or whether drafting behind a male versus a female body has any difference. Well, we won't find out from my POV alone. And yup, for now, I am still trying to draft in the very middle as if this is real life. Um, wow, so neat and even, and we are also the 3 primary colors. Very good. But wow, look at the heart rate. 164 is honestly chill. And there are some things I want to say about the stats at the very end, but let's save that for the very end. Oops, a small gap. Okay, so even when there's a small gap and I'm trying to make sure I catch up, I'm honestly being very careful in how I put the pedal to the metal and, you know, catch up. Yeah, this is really about not blowing out. All right, look, we are so close. We are so close to the end of the 4th lap, which is our midpoint, which is where I said I would stop drafting. In any case, I am currently not drafting very much because the 2 gentlemen are pulling off. They're pulling away. So let's see. I think this is my final hurrah. My final, let me stand on the shoulders of giants. Whoa! Perfect. Almost as if we communicated it. Ah, I should mention. So Isaac and Ryan, and actually the Hercules as well, they are doing this for the very first time in their lives. They have never done a Wahoo RGT e-Criterium before. So yeah, Isaac and Ryan, they went over to the weekend bike fitter and the bicycle renters studio at Ubi. They went over. Oh wait, who was that? Sacrifice to the lane or to the software. But anyway, so Isaac and Ryan were at Ubi to borrow trainers, or Isaac brought his own, to do this e-Criterium together. So I actually saw footage of both of them, and they worked very hard. Let me tell you, they worked very very hard. So as I pulled away from Isaac at this point in time, I remember being super thankful that I was able to draft for so long because it really saves me so much. Right now, you see, my heart rate is really 169, which is 5 BPM higher than 164, which is when I was behind Isaac. So look at how wonderful it is when you get to draft. Oh right, one thing I just want to mention. So you see, as I went around the corner, I kind of stopped pedaling, or like I didn't apply the same amount of power. And that's because of the physics of this software. But yeah, so right now I am cycling a lonely road, which is how I'm okay with anyway, because a lot of the earlier e-Criteriums, it was essentially a time trial for me since I was just alone the whole entire time. So 0 drafting, 0 watt saving, and purely just me against the virtual trainer against the virtual road. But yeah, actually, it's. I mean, I could never catch up with the front pack. They're super strong. Number one, their watts per kg are really insane. Their numbers are insane. And number two, they tend to be heavier riders than myself. So even if they did not have crazy watts per kg numbers, their raw watts alone is already much higher than mine. So I was never hard up to stick to the front pack because I could never. Like, it's just physically not possible for me right now. And I don't know how much training I would need to do to be able to catch up to these guys anyway. So yeah, so anytime I manage to draft, it is a huge bonus because I know what it's like to go full gas all by yourself, maybe 20 minutes, 18 to 25 to 28. I think that's generally the range of distances and duration for Entro e-crits so far. Okay, now that we're rounding another corner, just take a look. You see, my power is like 210, and then it just suddenly cut back to 170, and then whoa. Okay, okay, 157. 157 and then jumping to like 190, 200. Very strange. I don't know what's going on sometimes. Okay, nice flat road. On the race, during the race itself, I will definitely be keeping my eye out on the numbers in terms of how many meters away are people in front and behind of me. So, if there are particular people you are benchmarking yourself to, then you can, just keep track like, oh, are they now 100 meters ahead where they previously were 20 meters ahead? So you kind of know your own,
7 p.m.
I
left.
guess, performance relative to someone else. Although, of course, because their performance is a variable, meaning they could be having a super bad day. And then the gap between you and them closes, but not because you're great, more because they are having a super bad day. Or the flip side, where they're doing amazing and the gap opens up really big, but not because you are terrible. It just so happens that maybe they're drafting really well, or yeah, they're having an amazing day. So that's why even as you look at numbers to benchmark yourself, you kind of also need to give, or like just recognize that the numbers could also be affected by other variables that, um, not everything is held equal. Not all things are being held equal. Yeah, and actually on that note, I think, so as I'm climbing this sad and sorry hill, on that note, um, because Wahoo RGT takes into consideration weight, where you need to key in what your body weight is, so it does take in all these real world factors that affect your cycling in terms of how you can perform on certain terrain. Um, but yeah. Okay, you know what? Because it's just a long and empty straight road. Um, I guess what I can talk about, I mean, since there's no strat going on here other than the so-called strategy of making sure that I apply power without resting too much, but yet with an eye on the fact that there's still 6+ km left to go. So whenever I am doing these races, or basically whenever I am suffering real bad, I do a lot of math in my head, like very simple math, just math to keep myself distracted slash entertained. So what I mean is, you see how we have like 6 km left, and then I'll be like, okay, so 6 km is basically 2 times of what we just did, and then altogether it's like 6 times 3, and then a bit more, so we're just like 33% left. So it's stuff like that. Basically, just anything that you can latch your mind onto, even if it's just for a while. And I think it really, I wouldn't say matters, but I think
Nice.
it
Okay.
is quite interesting to see what your mind latches onto. So, for example, do you look at the names? Do you look at the distances between you and everyone? Do you look at your own avatar? Do you look at the avatar's butt and think like, oh wow, the hips are so stable, they're barely moving? Do you look at the leaves that are just flying past us right now? Sometimes, okay, so another thing is like, because actually the graphics kind of move fast, so by the time you see someone, let's say if you're going to overtake them, or let's say like just now we saw the Entro avatar parked by the side. Hey, y'all can take part in the race too. But so I will also just like, it's very interesting because I will notice them and I would observe them,
So close.
but the thought is really just like, you know, something floating in an ocean. Like the thought comes and it goes and it just floats away. So I think that's also why, even though obviously virtual racing is not walk in the park, even though we are cycling through lots of greenery now. So even though it is painful, it can be painful, it's also a very interesting experience in terms of like the mental space, the psychology. How do you keep pushing? What kind of like self-talk do you give yourself while you are maintaining a rather high heart rate? Sweet, sweet finish line. When will I pass you for the final time? We have two more laps.
In less than 10 minutes.
Just two more laps, and each is over 2 km. So back to how I do random quick math. What I will also do is I will translate the distance to real life. So let's say right now it's 4.7 km.
Thank you.
So I would tell myself, okay, this is basically West Coast Highway. Okay, West Coast Highway is 5.5 km. And I know this quite specifically because I just published a YouTube video on West Coast Highway. Okay, so it's not a great example, but it's one that I can think of right now. Or I'll be like, okay, 2 km is the distance from my place to whatever particular place. And then in my head, I'll be like, you know what? Cycling that distance in real life is just so short, so breezy, so enjoyable. So let's just pretend that this is that, even though obviously it's not, and it's a lot more sweaty. It's actually a lot more sweaty. Yeah. Heart rate 167 is honestly low. It's honestly low. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, I'm not trying to go too hard. I'm not trying to blast off because I at the point in time I didn't know whether there was something wrong with me. So I am trying not to overdo it. That's one. And number two, sometimes why people would apply more power is because they are trying to catch up with someone. Basically, if you want to like up the level, you need to do it for a reason. Because you can't up the level sustainably, and if you could, then actually you were going too easy, right? So the thing is, you can increase the pace, you can increase the power if, let's say, there is someone just 5 meters ahead of you that you want to catch up to, then yeah, definitely go catch them. Or if you see that you are just 200 meters away from the finish line, then please blast off because you're going to end the suffering sooner. But otherwise, if we have 3.64 km left, then I'm also just gonna even out the power so that I can finish strong. It's all about finishing strong. And I do think that your body remembers the pain. So if you suffer so badly that when you finish this race and you feel terrible, I mean, you'll finish it fine, but you feel so destroyed. Actually, I think the next time round when you do a race, you learn the hard way. You learn the hard way how to pace out your power and be sustainable. But your body also remembers how scary and bad it felt to go all out. So, so honestly, yeah, that's how I ride outdoors when it's the long distance rides. Long distance meaning I guess above 250, 250 to 360. That's how I would ride. I would ride with the intention of finishing strong. So I would make sure that I don't gas out at the start. Although I always remember one very memorable ride where okay. So the long story short is I thought that the distance from my house to Woodlands checkpoint would take 30 minutes. So I budgeted 30 minutes. But for some nonsense reason, I totally misremembered, even though I somewhat regularly go to Malaysia to cycle. The journey actually takes me 60 minutes. So I had to do. Okay, it wasn't possible, but I was trying to do double time to get there. And the silliest thing is, I realized halfway on the way there that I had totally misjudged the time because I was like, hey, hold on. It's not possible for me to cover the next, let's say, 10 km in X number of minutes. And I was like, something is very weird. But yeah, so because I absolutely yeeted that 25 km from where I stay to Woodlands checkpoint, I suffered very badly for the rest of the ride, and I can't recall if if it was a 200 km or a 300 km ride in Malaysia. I think it was a 200 km. So I basically only recovered after cycling 150 km if it was a 200 km ride, or basically in the last 50 km in Malaysia, I finally felt okay again. But yeah, it's very difficult to that's basically where I learned the hard way that it's very difficult for you to recover while you're still cycling. Yeah. Honestly, I didn't need to go through that awful experience to know this lesson. I do know it theoretically, but yeah, having experienced it was, yeah, it was brutal. We are so close. We're so very close. Once it goes under 2 km, you can just tell yourself, okay, 2 km divided by 2 is 1 km. So we are very close to 1 km. We're almost there. We're so close. We have done 7 full laps by this point in time. What is less than 1 lap left? And in fact, it's not even less than 1 lap left. It's almost half a lap left. And we are already done with the tiny climb, which is in the first half of each lap. So yeah, I am a lonely goat. I'm a lonely goat. Fighting my way to the finish. Let's see how much power I put down at the finish. I actually don't recall what it was like. Yeah. Testing. Okay. Hit down. Here we go. Finally, 1 km left. One sweet km left. When the 3 digits start ticking away, that's when you're like, wow, every meter, and you're closer and closer to being able to stop pedaling. Or you're closer and closer to letting your heart go back down, or your heart rate go back down. 169. 400 meters. And then at this point in time, I'm probably thinking of a stadium. 400 meters is a short distance, unless you have to run it. Then 400 meters is a painful distance if you sprint it. If you walk it, then it's fine. 400 meters is fine. But depending on how hard you go at it. 200 meters left. Usually, yes, I kind of start my sprints around the 200 meter mark. The heart rate is already going up. It's already 170, 171. I was gonna say a few meters ago, we couldn't really see the finish line, so it kind of felt like indefinite. But visually, as long as you can see the end, it really helps you push ahead. Look at that, 368 watts, 390 watts.
Thank you, Isaac, for the lead out. 4 laps of lead out. With that, I was able to preserve a steady, stable, relatively low heart rate. I don't even know if I reached 172, maybe right now. So that was 33 minutes, 54 seconds. I should be second place for women, unless there's another woman besides Sarah Tan in front of me. that is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That's 4 days of cycling in a row, ending with today's race.
We're gonna go to the results screen in just a bit.
Let's take a look. Oh my god. Let's take a look at the results. I'm 18th place overall. Hopefully second for women. And okay, so that was 19.9 kilometers. My average speed, although it doesn't matter in an indoor setting, my average speed is 34.8, cadence 100 RPM. Average heart rate, thanks to Isaac Yao, shout out for like the 4th time because very grateful for the lead out. My average heart rate was 167. So to put things into context, for other Entro e-crits, for a similar duration, my heart rate can be averaging 175. But for this one, for half of the race, I achieved speed without the requisite power because there was someone in front of me helping me break the air resistance. My average power was 181, so I held 181 for 33 minutes and 54 seconds. It's honestly not a true reflection of my power because I was hiding behind someone for 4 laps. So you can't look at the speed. What you can look at is the wattage because okay, I can't really explain it right now. For those of you who know how to explain this, please go ahead. But anyway, guys, we are done with the Entro Cycles Singapore September e-Criterium. So, from my understanding, a criterium is just a closed circuit bicycle race. So an e-Criterium is that, but online. Okay, now let's look at the results of everyone else. So those were my personal stats for this ride, but what I can see on my screen is watts per kg. Guys, I'm so happy! So, why I'm so happy is because my, I held, so for 33 minutes and 54 seconds, let's just call it 34 minutes. For 34 minutes, I was doing 3.4 watts per kg. Wow, I'm so happy! Mwah. So happy! I'm so proud of myself! Yay! Okay.
I think the fact that I was still able to talk while cycling really shows you 2 things. One is how effective it was to draft for so long, and also how, I wasn't going 500%.
I was in a rush to get home. I was in a rush to set this up. I was stuck in a jam. My parents picked me up from work today, and basically in the town area it's crazy now. Don't bother driving there during F1 because everything is super clogged up. So I basically had maybe 6 to 8 okay minutes before the race itself to like just get warmed up. And for those of you who were here from the start of the stream, the live stream, you could hear me say that I was very nervous. I don't know why I get nervous before like competitions. And usually it's for running competitions. For a lot of other kinds of things, actually hold on. Maybe I do get nervous for like a variety of things.
We are gonna do the next Entro e-Crit somewhat soon. By the time this video is out, it might even be in the same week already. I am looking forward to it. I don't think I will fall sick or feel weird and funky in the few days before. So hopefully we'll have a pretty crazy ride. I look
Phew.
forward to it, and I look forward to making the
I
next
am
video.
so happy.
See you next time.
Inestimably happy.